Yeah, so inwards is pretty rudimentary or basic in terms of the way in which you navigate it. So we've got various dashboards, which are displayed on the right-hand side. This will obviously grow, and the format in which it's displayed over there will probably change over time. You can then select your water management areas either by clicking on the map or just dragging the slider. So I just want to move this little talking thing. There we go. So we've got the Limpopo, we've got the Olifants, and the reason why we developed it like this was to well, it wouldn't capture, but it would relate to the way in which the Department of Water Affairs is managing their systems. So, you know, you're not going to get someone from the Limpopo really interested in the Nkomati. So it would be nonsensical to pull all the data for the Nkomati into the Limpopo guy's dashboard. And that's why we went this route. So, you know, the IUCMA, you can click on it. You'll see then it gets selected. The first is the real-time dashboard that I'll just show you. So if you click your real-time dashboard, and essentially then, you know, you've got your secondary catchments, and you can either go along with your secondary catchments like this, or you can select on the map. It all depends on how you want to navigate. So I'm going to look at Ten Bosch, which is one of the key sites that the IUCMA uses for monitoring compliance, both locally in South Africa as well as internationally. So it's a site that's actually got targets set to meet for requirements that are going through to Mozambique. You can then set your start date, your end date, and you can click chart and verified, and essentially your charts pull in for the hydro. Then also what the user can do is they can add these to their own custom dashboard. So dashboard. You can also add photographs. You can, so that you wouldn't need to go back and re-look at the analysis. So if they want to access that, they can go to the user-defined dashboard, and then those graphs that you just had a look at would be in the dashboard. They can also then customize how they want to view it. Thanks to Dimas for sorting this out for us, because now you're capturing users' preferences essentially, and this is what gets uploaded to the system and kind of syncs locally. And then also just this kind of interactive, allowing you to move things around and build your own dashboard, because a water resource manager isn't going to want to go to that unverified dashboard every single time, select the gauging stations individually that he wants to look at, especially the real-time ones. So that's essentially what the purpose of this is. Obviously, you can see that there's a little bug there. It's meant to zoom in, but I'll sort that out. But yeah, so that's the user-defined dashboard. Okay, then we've also got a water quality dashboard. I actually want to show you the Olifants because Nkomati is relatively clean. So we'll go to the Olifants. And once again, this is all the data that's coming through from the Department of Water Affairs that we've pulled from these little kind of web URLs that Mike coded. And you can then select the type of kind of monitoring points. So you've got in South Africa rivers, you've got mines, you've got all these different types of lakes, estuaries. I'll just select rivers for now. You can select your variable, so you've got anything from calcium to total alkalinity. Obviously, the Department of Water Affairs has a lot more variables than this, but we've just stuck to the basic ones for now because that was what was available through the zip files. But we'll probably get hold of Mareka in the future and start incorporating the heavy metal data and some of the biological stuff like E. coli, because that's one of the requirements for the new project. Okay, so I'm going to look at sulfates, which is kind of an indicator of mining that we generally use. And I'm going to search for a little nasty river called the Klipspruit. Clip crawl. Too many clips. Where is it? Did I pass it? Oh, I was added in the top. Okay, anyway, then you click analyze. Now, the low duration curve, there is no hydrology at the site, so there's a little N next to it. So that's why it doesn't get charted. But you can see almost all the sulfate samples for this site were non-compliant with the general resource quality objective. So in the Willy funds, they've now got specific resource quality objectives for different rivers and systems. These are just the general ones applied here, which go from kind of ideal, acceptable, tolerable. Then also the user can kind of manipulate the chart as he wants, and then you can also sorry. And then you can also save it. So there's quite a bit of, you know, I don't know, interaction with these charts. So you can also deselect various bands, for example, if you don't want them in your graph when you export them. And I can show you one with hydrology. Oh, okay. So these bands, for example, are almost like targets that are set. So you've got your ideal range, which is where, you know, biota and biota would thrive. Like, I mean, that's your ideal conditions for your river system. You've got your acceptable, where it's like, it's still okay, not too bad, but watch out, we're starting to move up. Then you've got your tolerable, which is your more hardy species would survive, but you're probably losing a lot of your sensitive species. And then your unacceptable, which is you just shouldn't be in there. You've got major problems and you need to address them. So, and what else? I mean, that's pretty much it. I don't know. Let's just find a site here with hydrology. So the navigation we'll address, you know, because I mean, this is obviously quite a tedious way of navigating. Let's just go to Mambo. I know there's flow there. There we go. Okay. I went to the site. That's good. I need 2 samples. There we go. There we go. There we go. So this is a load duration curve. So it's basically the tons of the pollutant in tons per day. And we can see that in this case, we exceeded predominantly from normal conditions down to low flow. So obviously your very low flow is very little dilution capacity. But what you can also see is that we went compliant in about 2000, kind of this period here. And we know, because obviously we work in the system, that this is when the mines were told they weren't allowed to discharge into the system anymore, because this is a site just as you enter Kruger National Park. So you can see how quickly it actually became compliant. So this is when the mines were allowed to discharge into the system, and we moved into where they weren't allowed to discharge into the system. Okay, then this is now, I'm going to show you an example of what we kind of refer to the collaborative process. So these are your custom dashboards created for your users that actually play a significant role in the management of the system. So the first is we've got the TPC dashboard, which is the one for Kruger National Park. And essentially it's these bands that we told you about. So you'll see it's up to date, kind of real-time data mixed with verified. So it's like a combination, I call it combo flow. But yeah, so it's got different worry levels, and each one of those worry levels have different actions that are needed to be taken. So for example, there's a river logbook here, and it records all the different events and then what happened and what should have happened. So the different management options. We've also got a place where the IUCMA can actually submit the operational reserve. So they simulate the reserve internally in kind of I think it's like a weekly basis. Yeah, it's like a weekly basis that they simulate the reserve, because obviously the reserve is not static. As discharge isn't static, neither is the natural conditions. Then they submit it, and then Kruger National Park will be able to see, okay, this is their targets, and see how it actually coincides with their targets. We then have the IUCMA dashboard, which consists of all these sites, and each one of these charts represent an environmental water requirement site where they are mandated to meet the reserve. And as you can see, there are quite a few times that the reserve isn't met with very low flows, but as I said, they went through a very dry period. So this is for the previous hydrological year, and it's only now that they're coming out of the extreme drought. But that was also against the 60th percentile. You can select any other percentile. So for example, say I don't want the 60th, I want the 99th, which means it's drought flows. And the compliance should show better. Yeah, so you see the compliance is way better. And then this is a snapshot kind of overview of that compliance. Okay, moving on. So the verified dashboard is essentially going to be your verified hydrology, but I won't show that. I mean, I can't show that because I haven't developed that yet. It's one of the next ones. But the verified hydrology is already being pulled in. So let me just show you here. If we go to the Limpopo, I'm going to go to a fish ladder where there's lots of data. Then I know it's let's see here. There we go. No, not that one. Okay, so just to show, let me just actually zoom in. So all the green sites, as I said, are your biodiversity sites or fish sites in this case. All the blue sites are hydrological sites. So you can click on it and it will select it. So they're now livable. So now I've selected a fish site as well as a hydrological site. It then pulls. So we've already pulled the data from FBIS. It's like in a pseudo database at the moment. While developing, I'm not going to be pulling multiple times, but in the future we would basically be using the API constantly to pull from FBIS to ensure that everything's in sync. You can then see all the species that have been recorded there, and you can select your date range that you want to look at, and then click analyze, and you'll see now, so the scripts that you're seeing at the moment are actually running on the server, and you can see how slow it is. So currently they're being developed on the server while we're in testing phase, so that if there are any issues with the scripts, I can update them. In the future, when we get the program sync for auto updates roll out, everything will run locally. But luckily, you only have to code it once and then it'll work. So the FBIS site overview is given over here. The plan is that there would be a button that allows the user then to go get all the information about the site in terms of your ecoregion and all the information, everything that Helen and Jeremy and Tim presented in the first, of the series. I think it was the first one or the second one. We would want to kind of redirect the user there. We don't want to replicate anything. So the plan is that we would predominantly just stick to hydro, not replicate anything. So as we said, we've got a time series, and you can view when each of the sample, the sample was taken and which species were caught in that sampling trip. You also then have this duration curve, but I won't mention. We're still discussing the validity of representing the data like that. We then have the indicators of hydrological alteration, and this allows a user to quite quickly identify if there were any major changes in your hydrology. You can also just have a look. You can deselect all the others and look for October. So you can see 1992, 93, we had major drought there. But even though we went through a major drought now, we didn't go all the way pretty much to zero. And this has really been attributed to the way in which Kruger National Park has approached their management, with these TPCs being implemented and taking a more proactive rather than reactive role. And then we have, the number of days that was zero. So as you can see, we moved now even through the worst drought in history, which was now 2016, 2017, 2018, and we didn't get any zero flow days. Base flow index, the timing of your hydrological events, both for the dry as well as the extreme highs, the high pulses, the low pulses. So yeah, there are various number of different representations, and I mean that's essentially inwards as far as we've gotten now. The next step is to link macroinverts and hydro. Then we've got fish and water quality, and then macroinverts and water quality, and then giving a stab at developing or potentially modifying existing ecological models. So looking at how we can create some form of index. I know Helen and them have got quite a cool scorecard that they've developed, and we'll be in discussion with them. But yeah, there's lots of room. How long's a piece of string? We could go down the rabbit hole, but we'll see. So far, things have been great. And I mean, we would have never been able to do this if it wasn't for FBIS. I mean, we would have kind of stopped at the hydro. So that's been great. Yeah, that's it from our side. No, that's all of them. Yeah.